Well, obviously, my name's Nick, and I'm a heroin addict, among other things. I guess my addiction started pretty early. I don't know for sure, not around to ask, but I'm pretty sure my mom used while she was pregnant with me. I was a couple months premature and spent a while in an incubator at the hospital. And then, not that I remember it, but she used to love to tell the story of I was 3 or 4 and we were driving across the country to Oklahoma where the entire family lived, and me and my little sister were bouncing off the walls in the car, and she had had enough and wanted to just drive, so she split up a codeine pill and had us take this codeine hoping it'd knock us out. And I guess it backfired on her, and we just went even more ape shit, and she had to pull over and lose time and let us run it off in a field. So I guess that was really my first taste of it, not that it had any real long lasting effect, but I grew up with 2 parents that loved me. I didn't have a bad upbringing. I didn't have a rough childhood. My parents were split up and they hated each other quite a bit, so my biggest hardship was having to be 2 different people in 2 different places growing up for my life. I went to school down on the coast with my dad, who was pretty strict, who made me go to school and do things the way you're supposed to do them so that you turn out a half-decent human being. And then my mom had us on the weekends, and her attitude was the exact opposite. Do what you want, where you want, how you want. I want you to have fun. And so growing up wasn't bad. I wasn't scared or anything like that. I have fond memories of my childhood. My dad drank nightly, but he never got drunk. He'd always have a whiskey and soda for dinner and a couple pipe hits before a movie, or if we were going out to dinner, he'd say, "You kids ready? Get in the car." We'd go get in the car and sit there for 10 minutes. Well, where the hell is Dad? And he'd come out to the car stinking like a skunk, and he'd be like, "You stink, what's going on?" We didn't really know what he was doing, but shut up, we're going, don't worry about it. And my mom hid her addiction from me very well as a younger child, and I didn't have any idea anything was going on until I noticed these iced tea pitchers in the fridge full of this pink stuff that she was very adamant about that I didn't touch. Don't touch that. Just don't touch it. I'm like, all right. Never thought twice about it until a friend came up and said, "I think that's methadone." What the fuck is methadone? And he's like, "Can I try some?" I'm like, "Sure." He tries a little sip of it, and he is just loaded. And he calls me about 4 days later, and he says, "Don't ever touch that shit. It was fun for the first day, but god damn, the next 3 days I thought I was gonna die. Don't touch it. Just stay away." So I did. I was like, all right, good deal. You bit the bullet for me. I'm not worried about it. I wasn't ever curious about it. And then my dad came up to my mom's house, and at this point I knew what methadone was. He had told me it was for people coming off of heroin, and so I kind of put 2 and 2 together. My mom did heroin, and my mom and dad were having a visit about us kids or something, and I hear a thump. And then immediately after, I hear, "Wake up, Robert, wake up." And I'm like, oh, that can't be good. I have no clue what's going on, but that can't be good. So I called 911, and I said, "Something's not right. Hold on." And I yelled through the door, "Hey, pick up the phone. I got 911 on the other line. Pick it up. I don't know, handle this." And I think it was 11 or 12 at this time. And so the paramedics came, pulled my dad out of the room on a stretcher, and resuscitated him right there in the living room. And I remember when he woke up, they said, "All right, you're coming to the hospital with us." And his first words were, "Fuck you." And I'm like, what the hell just happened? Why is he pissed? I thought they just... And they're like, well, you can come with us or you can go with the police. So he went with them and got out shortly thereafter. And I just remember him sitting on the porch steps, just head down, didn't talk about it. And we never talked about it again. And then about a couple years later, I knew he smoked pot. And so I started pinching a little bit of pot, and I saved up a little bit, and I smoked with one of my good friends one weekend during 7th grade, and didn't even get high. I don't know if we didn't do it right, didn't smoke enough, or what. I mean, we were out at a campfire late at night, so nobody could see, out on the coast, and had a little pop can pipe, and I don't know if I blew it out before I blew it in, or what the hell happened, but I didn't even get high, and I was like, fuck, I was shitting bricks this whole time, stealing that, stashing that, and what the fuck did that do for me? Nothing. So I didn't touch it for a few months, and then somebody at school had some, so I tried it, and then I liked it. It was the middle of the day or something, I can't remember, but I just remember going, ooh, weed, I like it. And so I started smoking more and more. And then my mom caught me on a weekend, and she wasn't happy about it, but she said, go clean the garage, and I won't tell your dad. And I thought, well, shit, as long as my dad doesn't find out, I'm straight. No worries. I can deal with that. So I cleaned the garage. He didn't find out right then and there, and I continued to smoke weed. My mom quickly adopted the attitude that I would rather you smoke weed at the house than going out and doing anything. So every weekend, I would come up, I would do a little house chore, mow the yard, or clean up the basement or something, and she'd give me $20, and I had my permit at the time, and she'd say, stick to the back roads, don't get pulled over, take my car, go get a bag, and get me a coffee on the way home. So I kept her happy and got to go buy some pot with a friend, and we'd come back, spend the whole weekend getting high, and then I'd go back down to the coast and pinch a little bit from my dad here and there so that he wouldn't notice, and go to school, and started not getting in trouble at school, but the school knew. They bring the dogs. The school was small, 250 kids in my whole high school, so it was small, and if word gets around easy in a little town like that, so they knew, but they never could prove anything. Every time they'd search my locker, no, I didn't have it in there, or anytime somebody ratted on me, of course, I handed it off and never got caught at school with it. And then when I got my license, I had enough of my dad. He was trying to get me to do the right thing. No, you can't stay home for a little headache so you can play video games. Your ass is going to school. And I knew if I went up to Salem and lived with my mom, I could be smoking pot all the time. I could be doing what I wanted, where I wanted, how I wanted. So I took myself out of high school from the coast, packed up my shit one day, and left. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say I'm planning to do this, Dad. I just bounced and moved in with my mom. And I remember he called me, and of course I didn't answer. I hit deny, and he left a voicemail of, I wish you wouldn't do this. I think you're making a mistake, but you got to make your mistakes. Stay in touch. And he wasn't, I expected him to be livid. I expected him to try to drag me back or something like that, but he didn't. He was freaking awesome about it. So I moved in with my mom and started going to school at South Salem High School, which had like 2,500 kids. So I went from I was never in the popular group, but I was friends with some jocks. I was friends with some popular kids. I was friends with the dweebs that played Magic. We'd play Magic at lunch every now and then. I wasn't in any one clique, but I had friends in all of it. And I was kind of an extrovert, class clown and all that. When I moved to South, I became an introvert, and I just clammed up. I didn't make any friends. I went to school, came home on lunches, smoked pot, went back to school, came back home, and that's all I did. Smoked pot, played video games, and did the bare minimum to get by. shortly after I moved up, my mom got tired of spending money on it. And since she was sick, she had hepatitis C and was a severe addict herself, she was like, I'll get my medical card and you can grow for me. So before I was 16, I was growing pot in the basement. And she gave me all the money to buy the lights and this, that, and the other thing. And, she had her card, so we were getting hookup from the medical co-ops, and I was growing really good pot. And I wasn't selling it because I didn't have a bunch of friends or any network. So I was just growing all this pot and storing it and smoking as much as I could and smoking out everybody that would come hang out. It got to the point where I would let people come over just to smoke them out, just to see how messed up I could get them. I ended up meeting a really good friend at the mall because a friend suggested, hey, if you got enough bud, we can go hook this dude up and he'll hook us up with sandwiches. And I was like, yeah, So we go do that, and then the guy starts hitting me up, and we start hanging out, and I start getting that shit delivered. He's like, hey, man, I got my break, I'll come bring you a sandwich. I'm like, fuck yeah, bring it on, let's do this. So, that's how I made friends, and it was a good deal. I was doing exactly what I wanted, how I wanted, and I loved it. I was having fun the way I wanted to have fun. And I had this pride of, I just smoked pot. I did mushrooms here and there, but I never did any coke. I never did any heroin, any meth, anything harder than pot and shrooms. I never even tried acid. I was too scared. And I had seen what heroin had done and was doing to my mom, so I never wanted to touch that shit, and I was proud that I hadn't. And then my brother passed away when I was 19. And he passed away from some heavy drinking and a methadone pill. Or pills, I don't know, the story's still fuzzy, or jury's out on that one. But he was passed out drunk, and they laid him down on a mattress in their garage, and he aspirated into his lungs and suffocated, and his friends panicked, didn't quite call 911, did a little bit of Google research, and then got into the car and dumped him off on the sidewalk at ER, where they revived his body, but he never woke up and was never going to wake up. He was gone. So I don't know if we pulled the plug or one of the nurses gave him enough morphine or how they did it, but I remember being in the hospital and watching that ventilator struggle to pump air into his lungs and it jerking. God, it's a vicious mental picture. It's terrible. So that was a pretty hard deal, and it killed my mom. She had been struggling with addiction. I remember her being sick all the time. I remember her always wanting to be clean and get clean, but never being able to get through withdrawals. And when he died, finding the methadone in his system was kind of a shock, because he was going to Shemeketa to be a firefighter. He was in the firefighter program and was killing it. And so to find methadone in his system after a toxicology report, we were all like, what the fuck? And she flipped a switch and lost a light and hated methadone from that point on and refused to touch it. And since she wasn't doing methadone, she started doing heroin. And it was a blessing and a curse that reconnected me with some of my brother's friends. I ended up getting one of my best jobs ever through a friend, and that was also my first run-in with the law. I went to a get-together with his friends, and we all ate mushrooms, and I wasn't quite feeling it, and so I left. And I left, this was in Jefferson or Turner, I can't remember. And I remember trying to drive home at night on shrooms, had never been there, so I'm trying to find I-5, and I can't find I-5, and I'm going through all the back roads and towns. I start coming down Almsville Highway or Kubler or whatever way out there. I'm still no idea where I'm at, but I finally see a sign for I-5, so I'm like, all right. And I pass a cop, and it's like 2 a.m, and I'm like, fuck, I'm getting rolled. Shit. I've got a little bit of weed in a little container, so I open that up, down that, and I'm still high as hell on mushrooms, and I leave it directly in my lap, the empty container. So the cop pulls me over, and he goes, what's going on? Where are you headed? I'm like, oh, I'm just getting back from a friend's house. I'm trying to get home. I have no idea where I'm at. I'm freaking lost. I'm trying to get home to Salem. It's like, how long you been here? I'm like, oh, 10 years or so, 5 years. It's like, really? And you don't know where you're at? Like, not a clue, officer. Your guess is as good as mine. It's like, well, what's in your lap? I'm like, oh, that? Shit. You don't really want that. Oh, shit. Oh, well, it's a little bit of weed. Is that what's all over your tongue, too? I'm like, yeah, it's fucking terrible. I need some water, this is bad. He's like, well, hop on out. I think we ought to do a field sobriety test. So I get out, and I have no idea how I did on a field sobriety test. I can't imagine I did too bad, but he was checking my eyes, and he kept saying, you just smoked a little bit of pot at this get-together? I'm like, yeah, that's it. I just smoked a little bit of pot, that's all. So you're sure you're not on anything else? I'm sure. What that difference would make, I don't know, but... So he arrests me, puts me in the cop car, and drives the freaking 2 blocks back to the jailhouse, because that's where I passed him. He was pulling out of jail, and I was right there on freaking Kubler. I was in fucking Salem. I was sick about it. Like, what? Really? That's Kubler. I was fucking 10 minutes from home. Shit, I thought of that. So I had my first DUI and my first job, and I decided I was going to do it right. My dad had just had a DUI himself, and I remember going to hang out with him and him saying, I can't smoke with you. I got these classes to do, and I can't smoke. And so that was what really gave me the strength to be like, fuck, if that guy can do it, I can do it. So I stopped smoking pot and went to court, did all that, took care of it. By the time I got into treatment, I had been clean off of pot, and so I gave a clean UA, gave him this sob story that I never smoked pot before, my brother just died, and I was hanging out with his friends, and I'm never doing it again, worst thing I've ever done. And so they gave me 1 UA, I passed it, and I did 12 weeks of treatment along with 12 weeks of AA meetings. And throughout the treatment and going to the AA meetings, I knew I was going to start smoking pot as soon as I got done. So going to the AA meetings, I never wanted to smoke more than when I got out of one of those things. I was just like, oh my God, I can't take it. All these old folks are just pissing and moaning, and they have this disease that I think is a choice, and I'm just frustrated, fed up, but going through it, doing it because I had to. And I paid off all the bullshit, paid for the classes, paid for the victims panel unit, and felt good about handling that and taking care of it myself. And then once I finished and graduated, I immediately went back to smoking pot because I had been curing some shit for freaking 3 months. I was ready to smoke that stuff. And then at about 24, my mom decided we weren't getting along. My dad had reached out, and we started a stereo business. He, just out of the blue, I hadn't talked to him in a year or so. He calls me out of the blue, and he's like, hey, you want to start a stereo business? And I'm like, yeah, I like having stereo. I like having speakers and stuff. Hell yeah, let's do it, sure. You're going to put a badass stereo in my room and call it a demo unit? Sign me up. So we started being dealers for high-end audiophile stereo manufacturers. And the attitude my dad had blew me away. Like, he never held it against me for bailing on him. He had a little bit of resentment for my mom, but he wasn't an ass about it. He wasn't an ass to her about it. And I saw that. And when I reconnected with him, it killed my mom. And it hurt her a lot. And I, going over some step work recently, realized growing up my entire childhood, I was never on good terms with both of my parents at the same time. I either hated my dad and loved my mom and was bitching about my dad and wanted to be with my mom, or loved my dad and was bitching about my mom. You know, my dad started helping me out. We started doing a business and building something together, and my mom had already been spiraling in depression and addiction, and I couldn't help her, couldn't do anything about it. And so she decided to move out, and I bought our home from her, essentially. You know, I finagled some stuff with a bank and took out a small loan and purchased my first home at 25 and had a 2-story, 4-bedroom home with my name on the title, and I felt like a badass. I had stopped smoking pot, I had stopped smoking cigarettes, I was clean and sober because I wanted to be, not because I had to be, and I was killing it. I was working full time at a golf course, at a job that I loved. The pay was crap, but I had a freaking very, very, very manageable mortgage, and so I was comfortable, I was content. And then I started thinking, all right, the only thing missing in my life is a significant other. I got to start getting the ball rolling on that. And so I did, and I met a girl, and we started seeing each other, and it was rainbows and butterflies. You know, I'd been an introvert in high school and always entertained myself, so I'd never had a girlfriend of any kind, in any way, shape, or form, until I was freaking 24, 23, 24, I think. Too old. And so this was all new to me, and it was all amazing. And I was infatuated, enthralled, consumed, and I was doing good, so what could be wrong about that? 3 months after seeing her, she got pregnant. And I, after putting my dad through some shit, seeing my mom struggle and see how much my positive relationship with my dad killed her and hurt her, I never wanted kids. I never wanted that responsibility. I just wanted to be with one other person for the rest of my life and have fun and continue doing what I was doing. And she got pregnant. And so I had watched my mom destroy my dad and my dad's credit over child support and stuff like that. And she used us kids as a weapon against my dad. You know, taking us when she wasn't supposed to, or piercing my ear, talking me into piercing my ear just to piss him off. You know, little stuff like that. She just couldn't help it. And so I knew I never wanted kids. But at that point, I was like, all right, I am forced to make a decision to either continue on or be like my dad and have to fight this woman tooth and nail and let her have a lot of control and power over my life, or I can try to create a family and make this thing work. And so that's what I did. I took out another second mortgage or refinanced and took out enough money to pay off her car, pay off her credit card debt, consolidate all of that into the mortgage, pay for our wedding, get some cash money to help for the upcoming baby and some remodels at the house, and basically doubled my mortgage and had to put her on the title to my home, which I didn't have a problem with. You know, I never second guessed it. I never worried about it. I said, I'm going to do this 100% with no reservations. I'm not holding anything back. And my mom was furious. You need to do a prenup. She's going to take you for everything. And I said, you know, if I go into it with a prenup, that's me going into it assuming it's going to fail. And I'm not doing that. No. So I didn't do any of that. we had my son, Nolan, and it was strange. I had this expectation that as soon as he was born, all my resentment and animosity was going to evaporate, and I was going to fall in love with this baby, and I didn't. And I still had my resentment, and I still didn't want to be a father. And I continued to, as soon as I found out she was pregnant, that's when I went to work and hit my boss up for a cigarette. Hey, give me a cigarette. And he was like, you don't want that, you're gonna be smoking. And I'm like, give me a cigarette now, I need one, I'm gonna get one. You can either give it to me or I can be a few minutes late to go get some. He gave it to me, I started smoking pot and all that, right all over again. And when my son was born, that's what I did. I took care of my son. I continued to go to work. I did everything I needed to do, but that was my release. That was my escape, was smoking pot and listening to music on my stereo. My dad started coming up, and we started remodeling a room upstairs. And for the next year and a half, that's what we did. Every weekend, we worked on upstairs. He saw my son, and me and my wife were slowly, distance was growing between us because I was more concerned about listening to music and smoking pot than I was about being an active husband or father. You know, I was there all the time. I wasn't going out, hanging out with friends or going out to the bar, but even though I was there, I wasn't present. And so some distance started growing, and then my dad got sick. And my dad got liver cancer and hepatitis C. And who knows how long he had had either one. He just finally got health insurance and was diagnosed, and they said, you've got about 2 years to live. If you don't get a transplant, you got to stop smoking, you got to stop drinking, and we'll put you on the list. And he did that. My mom had had hepatitis C for the last 15 years, and they had told her, you need a transplant. If you don't stop doing drugs, it's not going to be pretty. You got 5 years. She wasn't going to stop doing drugs. She kept getting 5-year extensions and 5-year extensions. So when they said you got 2 years, I was like, what do these doctors know? He'll be all right. He's my old man. You know, this guy's freaking invincible. And we started hanging out even more. We were going up to the VA, you know, looking at the transplant centers, and I was his support person for the cancer and all of that, and we really bonded, which meant me and my mom distanced even more. And she stopped calling on birthdays, Christmas, my kids' birthdays, Easters, all of that. We just stopped talking. And about 2 years to the month after that, my daughter was born about 2 weeks after my dad got so sick that they put him in ICU. And he started going through dialysis. He started having major complications due to liver failure, and he died about a week after my daughter was born, 2 weeks after my daughter was born. He never got to see her because you can't have infants in the ICU, and that just destroyed me. It wrecked me. It took a piece of me and left a hole that nothing could fill. No amount of pot, no amount of music, no amount of movies, nothing could fill it. And while I wasn't present before, it was even worse after that. You know, if they didn't need me to do the bath, if they didn't need me to tuck them in, I was upstairs bawling my eyes out, listening to music loud enough for the block to hear, you know, just trying to cope any way I knew how. And about 6 months after that, my wife started having an affair, and that caught me off guard because I was too busy dealing with all my depression from my dad and all that. And so it caught me off guard, and I was like, holy wow, this is really bad, not good. And she didn't want to stop it. You know, I caught her and confronted her and said, let's work on this. You know, I still want to be a family. I still want to make this happen. And she didn't really want to. And I guess I tried hard enough and put enough effort in that she finally stopped the affair, and we started going to counseling and trying to work it out. About 6 months after that, my mom finally passed away. And it was right at the point where I realized I needed to reach out and try and establish some kind of relationship with my family left. And we had a date set up for her to see the kids on a weekend, and the Saturday came up and the kids had a little sniffle, I had a little sniffle, and I was like, I can't make it, we're kind of sick, we'll have to reschedule, we'll have to do it next weekend. And the next Sunday, she took her death with dignity prescription and went into a coma for 3 days. My sister was there with her, and my sister tried to do the same freaking thing. My sister had become a junkie at the same time with my mother. My mother's depression sucked in my sister's. She had a litany of her own other drama and hardship, and so she was legitimately depressed as well, and they just fed off of each other. But she took her life, and that brought back all of the pain that I had almost just gotten over from my dad, and it all just resurfaced again, and I was just absolutely crushed and devastated all over again, and started doing the same shit of not being present and trying to take care of myself. And that's when my pride of never having tried any hard drugs dissipated, and what was left behind was this insane curiosity to do anything and everything I could find or do. Inside of 1 week, I had tried ecstasy, coke, and heroin for the first time. Like, it all just fell into place somehow magically, and I tried all of it. I loved ecstasy. Coke was, not that, I was like, oh, this is kind of pointless. And, heroin, I had seen what it had done. I wasn't a big fan, but I liked pills, and heroin was a much quicker route than pills. So I started doing heroin here and there. I still managed to keep my job and maintain my responsibilities and priorities, but I was still not present at all. My wife started having another affair, multiple affairs, and we started going for divorce for a second time. And she eventually found a boyfriend that she moved out of the house with around the same time that I got laid off from my job. And so I'm stuck at my home with no job and nobody to help with the mortgage and a heroin addiction. And so that didn't last but a couple months before she had no problems filling out some court papers to have me evicted from the home so that she could come in and try to sell it and get her chunk out of the house. And so that's what happened. I got evicted from my home and tried to move in with my little sister, but she was a severe addict herself and was having a hard time taking care of herself, so that didn't really work, and I became homeless with a heroin addiction. And shortly after that, I started trying meth and doing meth and heroin at the same time. And about a year of that went on, which was terrible, horrible time. That was the worst of the worst of the worst. And then I got into Bridgeway because I was sick, I was broke, I didn't have anywhere to go, I didn't have anybody to help. I'd kind of gotten on my feet at one point. A friend helped me get into a sober living house. I got a job, I was kind of on my feet, and then my little sister died. And that sent me into relapse mode. I had had a couple months of clean time, but when my little sister died and I was the last Lowry within 3,000 miles, I was right back into the deepest, darkest depression I'd been in. And so I relapsed hard and didn't give a shit and was just going to town, doing anything and everything I could to use to get away from that feeling. And then a friend got me into Bridgeway. And I got into detox. I did the detox. It was wonderful. And tried to get into residential. It was going to be like a 3 to 4 month wait. So when I got out of detox, I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do now? I got 3 months to wait. I walk across the street to Walmart's parking lot, and 30 minutes outside of detox, some random guy walks up and it's like, hey, you don't look too happy. You want to do a line? And I said, yes, sir. Hook it up. Let's do it. I got nothing to give you in return, but it's like, oh, no problem. I'll help you. You know, misery loves company. So I started using hard again, waiting for this residential bed. And then when residential bed came up, I was like 2 days away from finally closing on my house and getting some cash, getting a couple grand that I was gonna just blow and try to freaking off myself. I tried to OD a couple times, never panned out, never worked. I couldn't get enough or take enough. And so this was my big exit plan, what I had been holding on for the last few months. And Bridgeway calls and says, you got a bed. Be here in a few hours or don't. Try again, essentially. So I was like, well, fuck, it's a shitty time of year. You know, do I want to go to Bridgeway for 2 months and wait it out and then do this? Or do I, fuck it, I'll go to Bridgeway. So when I went to Bridgeway, I didn't have this grand plan that, I'm going to get clean, I'm going to do it right, everything's going to work good. I went to Bridgeway thinking, all right, I just got to hold on for 2 more months, and then I get that money, and then I can get back to what I was going to do. And I started going to the classes, and I, thank God, at least had an open mind, and I started learning about why I was using in the first place, about why I was running from the pain and how I was coping with it, and how it certainly wasn't helping with it. And it taught me a lot of how to cope with it, how to start working through it, how to not run from it, and to just feel it and process it and go through it and do it. And started going to meetings inside of Bridgeway because I told myself, all right, everything I've been learning for the first couple weeks is being helpful, so I'll do what they suggest. They haven't steered me wrong yet. I'll do what they say I should do. So I started coming to meetings. In the first couple meetings, I still wasn't quite on board. But then somebody made an analogy of, something as simple as, I think the analogy was, you come to meetings, that's like snorting a line of dough. You start doing the step work and the literature, and that's like slamming the dough, And so hearing that crazy analogy, it like clicked for me. I was like, all right, I'm on board with that way of thinking. I can get something out of this now. And I started getting something out of meetings. And I started connecting with people. And I found out that is what I had been missing. I had been missing a connection with people. I was alone, and I hated being alone. And so being at Bridgeway connected me with tons of people, tons of good people, staff, clients alike, that I see in some of these rooms right now, at the SOS Club, and I continue to stay in touch with these people, and they continue to give me what I was missing. They continue to give me support. They continue to give me connection and let me know it's okay to hurt, it's okay to be hurt, and it's okay to reach out and get help for that hurt and not have to go back to drugs. And it's the best thing that I've ever done for myself. It's better than going and getting a little job or any of that. Going to Bridgeway with an open mind and coming to these meetings with an open mind is what made all the difference. Hearing everybody's stories, hearing everybody's different opinions on why they used and why they decided to stay clean and get clean and stay clean, that's what keeps it fresh in my mind. And that's what keeps me happy. When I'm on my phone getting blown up, hey, you're going to kill it today at this thing, I'm sorry I can't be there, that's almost just as good as seeing them in person. And just having your phone blow up with positive reinforcement is the best drug ever. It's way better than any drug. And it's way more sustaining, and it's way more fulfilling. And being able to give that back is on just a whole nother level of that sustaining feeling. And being able to help people through some times, and being able to give your opinion and your advice and your experience and say, I've been there. This is how I got through it. Maybe that can help you. And for them to turn around and say, that helped. Thank you. That is such an uplifting, positive, and reinforcing emotion that trumps any negative emotion ever. You know, these days, something goes bad, something makes me feel bad, and I reach out to a friend that I've met in Bridgeway or these rooms, or I reach out to my sponsor and say, hey, I had a hard time with this, and they take me a step back and say, well, why did you feel this way? You know, and think about it. Try to process that. Don't run from it. Don't hide from it. Don't be afraid of it. Feel it. Embrace it. You know, there's no other way to do it. And when you can do that and feel good afterwards, you're like, I just kicked that thing's ass. This thing used to destroy me and bring me to my knees, and the only thing that would help was doing drugs. Now, it doesn't even bring me to my knees. I get it before that point. So I don't even get brought down to my knees. And again, helping other people, there is no greater joy, for me at least, than having someone's gratitude that you helped them out in any way, shape, or form. You know, life-altering or day-altering. You know, I'm wearing this freaking ridiculous outfit because it puts a smile on people's face, and that makes my day. Making one person smile, giggle, go, that's ridiculous, makes my day. If you smile, right on. That's all it's about, right there. So that's my story. That's my experience.